I idealised love for years. More mature than my age. From about the age of 10, I wanted to be in love, and I thought I was in love with my best friend at the time. Was I more in love with the chase and the feeling of wanting something so unattainable? Probably. But I know I was in love with someone else when I was 14, and he is now my boyfriend. But it's like the whole time before I got into a relationship, I was obsessing over, would I ever find someone? Am I worthy enough to ever find someone? When will this happen? And I think we have, as a society, or at least from my point of view as a young woman, teenage girl, love and relationship and yearning, a man who yearns is a man who earns, is such a big obsession in our society. And also now with the rise of like self-improvement and hyper independence, but also like femme fatale, I don't know, divine feminine energy, dark feminine, the idea that we don't need no man, but in a way that's kind of making us more desirable to men. I feel like that's the underlying aim, is to be an independent woman for show. Because if we were truly independent, we wouldn't need to make such a big show of it, surely, because we always say confidence is quiet, insecurity is loud. If we're making such a big show of, I don't need no man, I'm kind of dark feminine, I'm mysterious. If you're actually mysterious, we wouldn't be talking about it, surely. But no, I understand the point, but I feel like even then we have societally kind of ingrained it in us that everything we do as women is for show, everything we do is for performativity, and I notice this so badly for myself. It's like I can't remember who said it, I think it's just a quote about like, even when a woman's crying, she's watching herself crying. We as women are always looking at ourselves to see if we are desirable or not in that moment, and if not, what can we do to get there? Like crying whilst looking in the mirror. How we play, or maybe this is just extreme examples, playing like music in our head before we go to sleep to idealise these scenarios. Making up like obsession and crushes because we're bored. I was like this. I always had a crush on someone from the ages of about 10 to 16. There was not like a single time that I didn't have a crush, and if I didn't, I would feel so incredibly bored. I was so bored. It gave me that obsession, it gave me that thing to think about myself through as well, seeing like, oh, does he like me, does he not? That chase, the dopamine hits. As a creative person, the only time that I felt that amount of obsession for something else was when I was deeply attached to my work, and I think that's why we have this surgence of people realising now that you try to abandon your creativity as women when you are chasing after a man. I think also, now that I am in a relationship, being single is just as hard as being in a relationship. When you're single, you can fantasize and idealize things. And I think our perception that relationships should be perfect and that your partner should be able to be everything you want. No, you have to be everything you want. A partner is there to support you, but there's only so much they can do, because I don't think we seem to realise, or at least I didn't realise, you are taking two completely separate people from completely separate backgrounds and putting them together to create something together. Relationships is an act of creativity, which is why I think that women abandon their creativity when in search of a man, because they are in search of this creative project. There's so many things I could talk about. I could talk about now the idea of mothering a man, the idea of being in the divine feminine, the idea of dark femininity. Does this work in relationships? The idea of hyper independence and the idea of codependency. There's so many different ideas that come into this. But I think what I'm trying to say, to summarise, is that we have a warped perception of relationships. Relationships are very hard. From my experience, but also from people I know and the internet, it's this fantasized utopia that, and I think this has existed throughout time. I don't think this is isolated to our generation, but I think it's worse in this generation because of these shows that depict the perfect relationship. Like, for example, I was obsessed with the relationship of Nick and Jess in New Girl. And I think it causes a lot of shame as well if you don't have the perfect relationship, or if you don't have the characteristics of the person that you're watching on TV or online, because we can so easily create this warped perception of reality. It causes you shame because you think, I need to be like this in order to deserve love. Like I say, you're taking two completely different people, you've got different memories, you've got different experiences, you grew up differently, you've got, different beliefs, you've got different ways of thinking, and it's not easy. And I think if we keep pushing this narrative that relationships, yes, despite the honeymoon phase or the hormones, the core of a relationship, of a lasting relationship, and I know I'm talking as if I know everything here, but I'm not even talking about my experience. I'm talking about the experience I see around me and that I've learnt about. The core of this relationships that we're so desperately trying to build, it's as hard as it is being single. Because when you're single, you have all these ideas in your head about the perfect relationship and you feel empty without it. But in your relationship, those ideals of the perfect relationship create shame, they create kind of distrust, am I with the right person? And maybe you are, maybe you're not, but it's a learning curve, and it's kind of, you're being creative, you're creating something together, but it's a team project.